Once again, to everyone that's joining us today, thank you so much. I'm Daniel Alvarado. I'm the Chief Product Officer at White Shirt Media. I've been with White Shirt for, gosh, maybe about 12 years. I've been a little bit of everywhere. I am a marketer by day and an engineer ninja by night, or at least I like to call myself that. So Jesse and I kind of get along pretty well because we're also
Yeah.
in that sense. And I'm excited to be sharing the stage today with Jesse. And it's great to have you. I think this is the second one we do together, so it's definitely a pleasure to have
Yeah.
you back.
Thank
Different
you.
topic today, so you'll be our lead today. I'm going to be relying on you for a lot of these little nuggets of information, and our audience is very excited. So Jesse, why don't you give us a little bit of an intro about yourself?
Yeah. My background, like I said, is I was a coder for a while, went to school for programming, and you know, when you're a programmer, there's a lot of different places you could be. I worked at a startup for a while, worked at a hosting company, but then I was living in Los Angeles at the time, and I started working at an agency and just really fell in love with the agency lifestyle. And it was, early 2000s, so yeah, I'm dating myself, but like it was really kind of the start of, well, oh, okay, so this internet thing is not going away. Like, how are marketing agencies, advertising agencies actually going to leverage this and use it for our clients? So technology was a big component to that. And, at the time we were doing kind of everything by hand. Uh, you know, I would say like recreating the wheel a lot of times, like, when we're building new sites and stuff. So I really like fell in love with like how does marketing and technology fit together. And yeah, when we started Solid Digital, kind of like that was our approach, was like, okay, we're going to be the technology arm. And then as we kind of grew, we found our place in the marketing, I would say marketing world of websites. So I think there are different kind of flavors of website agencies, and we are very much focused on brand and marketing as an agency. And how do we, but then still, I still love to find ways that we can integrate technology. And I think, like, going back to the AI conversation, it is a kind of a new era in like how is this new technology going to be applied to our marketing? I think it's
Yeah.
relevant.
Thank you so much for the intro, Jesse. And like I said, I'm very excited about this talk. I think we could even do a whole series on website related things and how they play into marketing, into demand generation, optimization techniques from like an advanced, from a beginner level all the way through advanced. So I think we'll do our best to cover, some of these topics today. And for anyone that has any burning questions that you've always wanted to know or ask, somebody that's like Jesse that's been working on websites for over a decade or more. And so it's good to have you. And I think let's go ahead and jump right in. So we have a
Yeah.
couple of topics that we obviously want to cover. We have a bit of a mix. I don't want to let it just get away from the fact that we live, we're in a digital marketing agency. So White Shark, we do a lot of Google material, a lot of Microsoft material. We recently just became partners with Amazon as well. So we're doing everything related to PPC. And so I think it's important to just remember that, just like you said, there's a concept here of AI that's kind of building into all of these campaigns. And I think one thing that I want to say about this is your website used to affect your performance because that's where people land. But I think it's important to also mention that it affects your campaigns also because there are different bots that are parsing it to understand whether the content on that landing page really resonates with what you have on the copy. Is it aligned with the copy? Is it aligned if this is a search campaign, is it aligned with keywords and messaging? And then I think there's another component here now for those of you that are joining us today that are not agencies. Let's say you are, a business owner and you have your own website, you have your own business, and you're trying to create a campaign. There's a couple of cool tools that Google is pushing out for writing your own copy, through AI. So it will give you this little draft in. So if your website doesn't have the right content and the right messaging, then even this AI tools are not going to be able to pull in some data. So having the right content, the right imagery, the right information on the side, making sure that it's readable, understandable, it's also a great way to even help you if you're trying to do this on your own. So I think that's kind of what I see in the future.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I always default to, you can't really game the system, and the system is getting smarter and smarter at making sure that what you are providing is actually informative, is providing value to your audience. And I think that that's where, you have to you have to be legit, and and be consistent too. So like what
Yeah.
you're saying about like your ads to your website, like that has to be consistent, and it has to bring value. Like that's it. And you just have, and it's like exercise. You just got to do it all the time and get better and better at it.
Yeah, and I think let me ask you this, Jesse. One thing before we sort of jump right in, and this is one of the questions that I want to talk about is, are you finding yourself that the most challenging part for websites is the technical component? Is it the content component? What's the most difficult part for you when it comes to working
Yeah.
with websites for clients?
No, I think like so I've been building websites for 30 years. So 1995 is when I started, and it was way harder to build a website back in 1995 to 2005. So
Were
technically,
you on that Dreamweaver train?
oh yeah, I went through everything. But yeah, I was a Dreamweaver user. Um I think now, in for the most part, the tools that we use, like I don't think you have to be very technical anymore. We still have a strong technical team that can kind of fit in when we need to, but you know, creating custom functionality on a website is not like it used to be at all. And so even more complex things like search or e-commerce, like those are not as difficult as they used to be. So I think like for us at least, content is I'm not gonna say it's difficult, but it is definitely the part of our process that we try to focus the most on. And it's probably the most difficult part for our clients, because
Yeah.
you really do like have to, I mean, it's all branding. Like you have to know who you are and who you're talking to. And that's sometimes a little bit more difficult than it seems, right? Like we all feel like we could articulate, what we do, but coming at it from a third party perspective is a bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think content is king, really. And I think we keep hearing that over and over. But it really is what's most important. So I think
Yeah.
why don't we just jump into some of the things that really can affect your web design and execution. And I think we have a couple of them here, but I think I'm sure there's far more where these come from. Do you know what I mean? And I think
Yeah.
um give me 1 second. So for instance, we have using poor images that are, I think what happens for me on imagery more so than one, it could be a stock image, which there's nothing completely wrong with stock images if you don't have them. But I mean, if you have the ability to invest in, just a photographer that can go in there, take some
Yes.
good professional pictures of your business. If you're, for instance, somebody that's providing home services, or for instance, like let's say you're a dentistry and you have your clinic, you want to get some high quality res pictures of the clinic, of the staff, things like that. What makes it unique? Because if you were just using stock, I think, in my opinion, again, avoid them where possible, because I think it just sort of distracts the user a little bit. I think it takes away a little bit from the trust factor that you're not very unique in that way, or not authentic. I would say it's maybe the better word, more so than unique. So I
Yeah.
think for me, that's mistake number one. And then mistake number two for me is image sizing. And I think sometimes people will be on the two polar opposites. Either they choose the lowest res possible image, and then it's super pixelated. And if you're
Yeah.
looking at it on a big screen, like I'm using a QHD monitor, so those images are going to be extremely stretched. Or on the
Yeah.
polar opposite of that, they'll go and they'll upload a 10 megabyte file for the image,
And it's
and
supposed
then
to
the
be
site
exact.
speed just drops dramatically. So like, what do you currently do with relating to images?
Yeah. I mean, I agree everything you just said 100%. I really try to steer clients away from stock photography if we can, just, especially the stock photography where you could tell it's stock photography. Like just because you think an image should go there doesn't mean that you should put one there. So the more that, and, we're trying to humanize brands. So the more you can actually put in real people from your organization doing real work in your building, I think the better representation of who you are and your team. So those culture shots are really important. And yeah, I mean, image optimization, obviously, like that, but there are good tools now to help keep everybody in line. But the only other thing I would add on to that is just, we try to create uh style guides for
Yep.
imagery so that like, you know, whenever you're using a photo in this element or, on this page or, as a hero image, treat it like this. So giving some guidelines and keeping the consistency of actually like how you are creating the images for photography, I think is really important too. So that would include like overlay elements, but it also might be like contrast, brightness, like those types of things, I think really help in terms of keeping a consistent professional style to your website.
So that's on the imagery side. Do you have anything that you're doing for speed for images? Like, are you using like a content delivery network? Are you using and is that content delivery
We
like living on the background, or are you using more of like a plugin within either WordPress or Webflow to do the image compression? Like,
yeah.
what are you doing to manage that size?
Yeah, so we definitely use some plugins in WordPress to optimize images when they're uploaded and create like different sizing so that it's optimized for different screens.
Okay.
We've done a lot of CDN stuff in the past. I would say like for most of our brand websites, that's not really necessary and makes things a
Okay.
little bit more complicated, right? On the back end side. So, you know, goal for the and and we do for our clients, we do kind of like constant, almost hourly, daily monitoring of page
Okay.
speed for different pages. And
Really?
so
Hourly?
yeah, so we'll get a alert if something
Okay.
gets updated that is slowing the site down. And
Gotcha.
then we can usually step in and help if we need to.
That's actually pretty cool though, because I've seen it where clients don't really notice that there's something wrong on the site for a little bit. I imagine
Yeah.
monitoring is also related to like uptime and speed is one of the things you check for, but you're also probably checking for a couple of other things.
Yeah, well, you know, with WordPress and plugins, and we use Elementor on top of it. Like there's a lot of bloat
Yeah.
underneath the hood in that in that stack. So we focus a lot on optimization when we're building the sites, and then also just monitoring it because any little thing can add up, and speed site speed is very, very important. It has been for a
Yeah.
while now, but like it becomes more and more important as we go along here.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. Like, I will probably exit out of that page if it's in low within the first couple of
Yeah.
seconds.
Yeah. No,
And
there's a
I
yeah.
moved on. I moved on. So that's good on the site speed. I think while we're on that site speed, also, I think we obviously have that in the middle, which is having slow time, but obviously that could be related to imagery. That could also be related to other things. For instance, let me ask you this quick question. This is a philosophical question slash recommendation.
Like it.
And I'm only saying because I like how it looks, but I just don't know what your professional input is on it. How do you feel about a video on the hero section of the website for your homepage?
Yeah. I mean, point blank,
You know what I mean, right? Like the
yes,
video that
yeah.
plays auto on the background.
I mean, I'm done with it. I just think like style wise, it kind of it sets it kind of dates you at this point. I would say just from a website design perspective, like
Okay.
that was a thing that we all did in the late 2010s, and I would say nowadays it's not as prevalent. And I think I think you just like from a website perspective, you have to be careful with video just in general. Because I think users are less likely to press the play button on your homepage. So even if it's, I'm not, I know you're talking about like the background kind of
Yeah.
moving video, but like even if you're like slapping a huge, message from our CEO on the homepage, like it's very rare that that's getting a lot of impressions. So I would be careful because that real estate's really important.
Gotcha. No, I think that's very interesting. So what do you normally do for videos? You send them over to YouTube and make sure that your social links are there and stuff like that, or just maybe
Yeah.
have on like separate pages for like the about us and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, like I'm a big fan of I no, we want our clients creating as much video content as they can.
Yeah,
I think promoting them as blog posts that are, have strong landing page SEO value is really important. And then we know we ask them to embed the video and print out the transcript like underneath it so somebody could read it if they wanted to. Um, but also just then generate additional content based on that video. Like we were talking to a customer yesterday about this, like find a topic in that, create a video on that topic. Like there's probably going to be other things that you talk about while you're doing the video. Find ways that you can link to other blog posts or other pieces of relevant content on your site within the transcript too, so that, it adds more value there. Try to like my goal is always like for every one piece of content that you create, try to like create two other like three total assets for it, right? Like our goal with our consulting clients with our digital growth program is to be generating 10 pieces of content a month. But and that seems like an overwhelm, like for a small marketing team, that seems like an overwhelming amount of content. But if you start thinking about it, well, for this video, I'm going to also create a blog post and I'm going to create a piece of, an email or something like that. Like you're getting, three pieces of content out of this one kind of like production
absolutely.
process. Yeah.
It's reusing, adjusting, and obviously still kind of addressing the user wherever they are and how they want to consume that media. So I think it's a great suggestion.
Yeah.
And then I think another thing that could potentially maybe impact, speed is if you have a lot of plugins, like you said, not necessarily just plugins, but also if you have a lot of tags that are, doing tracking, or for instance, again, it depends on the situation, of course, but if you have a lot of JavaScript, that's the whole point on the
Yeah.
side. And I think if you're a business owner, it might be a little bit difficult for you to know. So I always just
Yeah.
recommend running your site speed test and then, talk to somebody that knows about it. But that's one of the things where when we go into that advanced section, there's some optimization that can
For
that can
sure.
take place in terms of, JavaScript and length of scripts.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's a difficult one to do on your own.
yeah,
like deferring when JavaScript loads or, when other assets are going to be within the loading kind of like process. So yeah, it's also a thing like just on not to talk too much on page speed, but like you can make some big jumps early, but then like incremental page speed is
yeah,
hard and it takes a lot more time and it takes a lot more engineering. So there's going to be a balance between like how much
yeah.
time are we going to spend, trying to get things to load, 500 millisecond faster.
Absolutely. I think there's
Yeah.
certainly a curve there, you know what I mean, in terms of um
Yeah.
the complexity of that. So I think if you can tackle low-hanging fruit options that are low complexity and high value, that's great. And then afterwards, the ones that are maybe smaller value and high complexity, just basically leave those there and that's fine. It's not going to be the end of the
Yeah.
world. So I think there's
And
that
I mean,
consider.
just another tip on this is like keep track of where people are landing on your website. So if you have pages where you're already getting organic results, right? People are finding this page through search. Um, Focus on those pages, make those pages faster, rather than, your entire website. That will definitely help because if you're already ranking, in the top 20, let's say you're 15 for a high volume search keyword, that's where the page speed is really going to impact um, your results in getting into a lower rank.
Agree with that. And then I think from there, those are kind of the bigger ones on slow. I think we can talk a little bit about responsive. But I think if you've been paying attention to the news since like, gosh, 2009, 2008, something like that, maybe even a little bit before that. When did the first iPhone come out?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
must have been
2006, 2007. Yeah.
something like that. So if you've been paying attention, you know that most people are basically just using their mobile devices nowadays. So if
Yeah.
you, I want to even say that I don't even think it's right to say if your website isn't mobile friendly anymore, because I think most websites are, maybe that's an overstatement, but I think half of the websites I see are still mobile optimized, right? So I mean, at least mobile
But
friendly.
it's,
So
yeah, but it's crazy that,
it will adjust the screen size. It's still not just enough. Uh,
yeah, no, it's true. It's, it's crazy. Like we're in we're primarily B2B. So we do end up like with some like manufacturing organizations where I'm like still surprised that they don't have a mobile optimized website at all.
yeah,
But then beyond that is like, you know, there's a good chance that for most brands, you're going to have a higher mobile visitor rate than you are desktop. So if
yeah,
you're not like really like thinking about that mobile experience, not just like, am I like checking off the boxes of being mobile friendly, but like actually like thinking about like, is this a good mobile experience? Like you're doing yourself a disservice. So yeah, I think there's more to it than just being responsive and, you know, uh, you know, is it true or false? Do I have a responsive design? It's really like, have I really like thought this from uh, the mobile user's perspective?
yeah. And I will say, for instance, what works for me a lot of times is I like to, for instance, make the content a little shorter sometimes when it's on the mobile side. For example, if I have a section with, you know, five different, let's say little bullets of information, which is feature and benefit one, description, feature and benefit two, and description. Like I'm not gonna allow all of those to show on mobile. Like I might be able to prioritize some of them. And so what I like to do is again kind of manage what content is shown on mobile versus desktop in terms of showing a little bit less, so the users don't have to scroll forever. Because what you got to remember is it will
Yeah,
adjust to the screen, yes, but then how much more are they going to have to scroll? And so it's also about, another thing that happens is, even if you think it will adjust, it doesn't always adjust in the right order you want it to. So sometimes you also have to play with the content
for
order
sure.
on mobile. And I think you have to account for that. And then I think the other thing you need to account for is just what is the text size when it goes into mobile. So for instance, if you have like an H1, which is your
Yeah,
headline, and then next thing you know, the headline that you have, because you got very creative with it, so it's a very long headline. Next thing you know is the headline is everything that's on the
yeah,
screen, and that's all you see.
yeah. That happens a lot, especially with blog posts. You know, like people have long titles for blog posts. But yeah, so I would just say like generally speaking, like this is what this is the trouble that our clients get into is like it's really hard to reduce what you're trying to say into as little words as possible. So, you know, we're all scanners at this point. Like we don't read full paragraphs of content. So like when you're saying on the mobile device, like I'm do it shorter, I would just say like do that anyways. Like keep your
Yeah,
desktop content short. Like keep your content short. Like if you are over 3 sentences into a paragraph on a website, like you're in trouble. Like, and I'm not talking about blog posts. I'm talking about like just your content on your page, like the about us. Like keep it short. um do everything you can to keep yourself succinct. Like it'll benefit you quite a bit, not just on the mobile device, but in the website in general.
in the long run, yeah.
Yes.
I'm a big, you know, advocate of just like, I'm with you. Like I scan things so quickly. And yeah, but so I think that's a big component to that. And I think, you know, trying to move a little bit into maybe a different slide here. I'm going to move
Yeah.
over to some of the slides that we have also talked about. This is, for instance, what we were discussing around, you know, kind of time of loading. So I like to keep it under, you know, 3 seconds. That would typically be kind of where I would want to be. But we're not going to spend a lot of time here. I think one thing that I want to talk about is maybe some of the elements in a good landing page. I think if that's good for you, we can kind of move on to that
Yeah.
topic. And so, I think obviously take this with a grain of salt in the sense that, this could be a format that you apply to a PPC landing page. I think this could potentially also work for maybe a service page. This I wouldn't say necessarily has to be like a homepage structure. I think there's differences in between that, but again, elements that in general work to convert are making sure that you have your clear headlines, that there is some sort of visuals. Again, if you have a text only page, that can usually kind of impact you again a little bit negatively because in my opinion, I think again, if you can offer some authenticity, a little bit more of a glimpse about what kind of company you are, what kind of business you run, I think that does add some value.
Yeah.
Having social proof goes a long way as well. And then I think the other component here is going to be something along the lines of a CTA. So I think the key ones here is a good quality visual, social proof, obviously having that clear CTA at the end or somewhere in the middle. And then obviously that your headline, like you said, is succinct, is straight to the point, and is relevant to. This is just in the universe of the page. Obviously, how do you connect that to a campaign? I think I'll talk about that in a second. But those are some
Yeah.
of the elements. Is there any element here that you also think makes sense to talk about?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's something to talk about on each of these elements. But just from a general perspective as well. I think like, we got to think about who the buyer is and what their intention is. So
Yeah.
you're mostly B2C, right? Like Daniel, don't you?
I think we're a little bit of both.
A little
I would
both.
say
Okay.
50/50, yeah.
So, and we're B2B. So when you're, because I have done B2C marketing, when you're doing B2C marketing, like it's usually transactional. Like you're like trying to get somebody to sign up for your service or buy your product or whatever, like within that campaign, that instance, right? Like they've seen your ad, they're clicking on the landing page, like I got to get them to do an action. In B2B, it's different. It's a slower sales process typically. For your business, you may have different kind of calls to action that you're trying to push, like whether it's like sign up for a webinar or sign up for a white paper or get a demo of our product or whatever. But also you have to like think that it may not be the stakeholder who's actually like making the decision is the person who's on that page at that moment. So like I think about our buyers typically for not our buyers, but our clients' buyers, like I typically think they're in a team. And I typically think that like a you know, a VP or a C-level person has designated somebody to go out and try to find them, a list of possible contenders of who they might buy from. And so that's like when I think about that and I think about the landing page, then I have to make considerations on like, well, what is the best thing to have here? Like, I would argue that a lot of times not putting your main navigation at the top of your landing page is a good thing because you're keeping them within the path that you want them to be in. But if you know that there's a lot of research that goes into making a decision to buy your product or service, then maybe the navigation is a good thing to have there because somebody can go off and learn more about you and dive a little deeper so they can put you on the list for their stakeholder. So I think that's really important. I personally, and I don't think this works for everybody, but I personally really like to touch on like the audience pain points. So even in the headline, like trying to like really dig into like what is a most generalized pain point that my buyers have that I could kind of like grab them with to where they're going to feel like, oh, I understand what's wrong, so that then I can kind of become the hero for their pain. Um, you know, pain.
Yeah,
So
but at the end of the day, like we are problem solvers, right? Like every
yeah,
business solves a particular problem within their buyer. So I think that always being focused on that pain point and how a particular service might solve that. That's basically what works for the landing page for us that were working on the campaigns, we very much do that and focus on that for our, our headlines or descriptions
Yep.
or some of the call outs that we do. So
Yeah.
I think we have to live at the center of that, or with that in center of everything that we do regarding the copy. But I think, you brought up some good points, which again is to differentiate between, this B2B versus B2C component. And I think that, like you said, for B2B, you can try to do something along the lines of, webinars, white papers. For instance, like we were just working with a company that does, what do you call it? They do software. And so they're a software company. And what we ended up promoting for them was on the campaigns, we did a landing page for a white paper on how they achieved a certain saving, because obviously they're focused on efficiency and savings. And so they had a white paper that I thought was really helpful. And so what we did is we did a landing page for that. And then we did a LinkedIn campaign that basically promoted both the downloadable content directly on LinkedIn, but also we had a variant to A/B test it that would send the campaigns or the traffic to the website into the landing page for that white paper. And really, like you said, at the end of the day, it really does depend on what is their price point too. I mean, for this particular company, they work with at the very minimum annual deals. So you're not going to get that as a simple transaction of
Right.
sign up
Yeah.
for software. So this is more in that kind of SMB to enterprise software. And so for them, there's a lot of building up to do,
Yeah.
like very well said. So having those different landing pages, and I think one thing that going back to campaigns and sort of what White Shirt preaches too is again understanding who that customer is or who this business is, and then also understanding that depending on how much market you have, you have to create some content for all three stages. So a little bit of for brand awareness, a little bit for that consideration, because you have to sometimes create the problem or educate people that they have a problem that you can solve for. And a lot of times
Yep.
that knowledge doesn't necessarily exist. And so creating some content around that. Oh, I didn't know that there was software that could do this. Or
Right.
again, if you have a very niche product or service, that's the same thing. So how you then connect that to the pages is very, very key.
It is, it's a balance because then you're going to also have really savvy buyers who've got a product that they've worked with that they're looking for very specific things that, maybe their existing solution doesn't do. So yeah, so you got to talk generally to detailed, and you have to get people to the place they need to be, in as little clicks as possible. And that's why I think landing pages are key. And when you're and when you think about the ad and where it's going, that should be a big consideration. Like if my audience is, a less knowledgeable audience, then maybe more informative kind of content when you land on that page. But if my audience is high level, like, CTIOs at hospitals that are very, we're trying to like change them, to consider a new, EHR health records, like they're going to know what components they're looking for. And so you got to really kind of like talk specifically about what your differentiators are and what makes you unique. So I think and my whole opinion on, and like you said it, A/B testing, right? Like test as much as you possibly can, like always
Yeah.
refine, like make minor adjustments. Like we're going to see like a example that I shared, the changes aren't significant between these two pages, but they impacted our conversion rate just for little things that we added. I would say just one thing right now, we psychologically, we see stars, like star ratings, and I know for me, like I buy on Amazon, like if I see a 4.5 star 200 review product, I'm buying it. Like I'm ready to buy it right away. If I see a 4 star review with only 3 reviews, I'm probably not buying it. I'm not skipping it. So I think like that has been something that we've been working on just even more recently, of just like put some stars up at the top, just to show that you are a reputable brand. And then yeah, different different ways of uh, applying um your bullets, right? Like with little icons, something like that. I don't know. It's just like you got to like test stuff. Sometimes it won't work. Go back to what you were doing before, but like it should be a refinement constantly to see if there are ways that you can improve the conversion rate on these. But like you can see it like this, we didn't change the form much at all, right? And we still got a 30% bump in our
30,
conversion.
that's very meaningful.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's not. You can say that what we did was actually made some impact. So, but it doesn't seem that much. If you just looked at these two screens, like I don't think anybody would be like, oh yeah, those are completely different. So that would be like my recommendation is don't throw everything away and start over. Like really like try to make sure that you're testing different elements.
No, I'm with you on that. And I think I like your approach of being very much iterative, you know what I mean? And it's not about, because for instance, I've worked with a couple of different approaches. And I remember it was like a lot of work if we needed to redo the landing page and just have a complete different variant. And then, you sort of felt compelled to have to do a completely new design because the existing design, you were getting lower conversions and you're like, there's no way, it's just a design that doesn't work. Let me just change it all together. And
Yeah.
maybe there are smaller things that you can do. And I like what you did because it's so subtle because we just talked about over here. Like we just talked about social proof.
Yep.
And I'm not saying this is exactly how we do it, but it's so fun that we have a whole section for social proof. And you basically took that and said, no, you know what? Let me just do this very, very subtle little star rating here at the top.
Yeah.
And if you've been buying software, you know what G2 is, you recognize the logo, you understand that. And so obviously
Yeah.
immediately right out of the gate, you're like, okay, this is proven, this works. So if it works for a lot of people, it probably can work for us. Maybe there's a chance that that could work. So I like the approach of being subtle, iterative, just minor iterations to test a change. And then how long do you normally let a change sit before you determine, if it worked?
I mean, well, it really depends. So like this is a key landing page. I wouldn't probably make too many adjustments on a month-to-month basis. Like we do quarterly strategy reviews with our clients. So we're kind of reviewing like, well, how do these campaigns do? What are some ideas on like how we might change them for this next quarter? Kind of like that's our experiment, right? But I will also say that if we see well, mostly if we see a down in a
Okay.
month, like we'll switch out. We'll try something new. Like, but I would say it's not weeks. It's like let's see how this does for a month and come back to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, if the numbers drop quite a bit, like we know we did something wrong. But the
And then I have a question for you on this. So, for instance, you had the original landing page, you have the new landing page. For us, or for anybody here that's listening, did you do this change to the landing page and then you rolled it out for 100% of the traffic? Or did you set up like an A/B test experiment that still threw some traffic over to the original and then another percentage through that new? I've seen people try both approaches, both the full versus the, just sort of a split traffic. What do you like to do?
I would say for the most part, um, we are we are doing a split, but it's not a like A/B test split. It's like a campaign split. So we'll take
Okay.
some of our audience and push them to one page and then another page. Um, Sometimes though, like, and I'm not sure exactly on this specific campaign, but sometimes it's just we know it looks better and we'll just update it and move forward with it. Um, but it really depends. It also depends on like how much data are you actually going to get, like, and do you have like the cycles? Like I said, this is a primary landing page, so I would assume that we did some sort of split here. If it's a smaller campaign, smaller audience number, like I want more data points so that I can look at it than I do, be able to A/B test. And again, it's like, this is also where you are, how far down the road in this kind of like iteration process with the landing page are you? Because like, if it's initial, it's kind of like it's like sculpting a rock. You're taking a rock and turning it into a sculpture, right? Like you're taking off big chunks at the beginning, but then as you go, you're kind of like making smaller refinements to everything. So so I think that really makes a difference. But if you can't A/B test, you have a lot of, if you're getting a lot of traffic from your ads and you're not seeing the click through the conversion rate that you'd like to, then I think, yeah, it's worth A/B testing.
Got it. No, I think I'm with you on that. If we're starting out, we ran for a couple of weeks, we didn't really get a whole lot of conversions. I think it's worth, just kind of changing it all together, and that's okay. What we'll normally do for clients is, at least for me, what we like to do is we'll do that split test. It doesn't
Yeah.
always have to be 50-50. For instance, if I'm very, very convinced that the new landing page is much better, I'll typically maybe do a higher percentage for the new landing page and then
Yeah.
less. But I still like to keep that kind of control group for a little while,
Yeah.
especially for a lot of clients. Again, if they're getting less than, because some clients, they have a little bit less budget, or their industries are expensive. So if they're getting less than maybe 10 clicks a day, then I might just basically switch it all together and say, okay, I'm just going to run with this for now.
Yeah.
Because again, it would just be peanuts, you know what I mean? Like, I'm gonna test it on 2 clicks a day. No, that would definitely not be
Yeah.
the ideal Walter approach. So I think,
And,
yeah, go ahead.
well, and on the opposite side of that, like the best place you can be is you're scared to make any changes on your landing page because your campaign is doing so well. But you may want to make some adjustments and see if you can improve things where you may only want 20% of your audience going to that landing page, because you don't want to impact your overall numbers, but you want to test something out to see if it's actually going to improve.
Yeah. Super. So you received about roughly 30% improvement from this one.
Yeah.
That was again super cool.
Yeah.
And then, is your approach different on a PPC landing page than it would be if this was like within the website itself, like as part of the standard website? I guess, were your
Well,
approach
yeah.
different, or would you iterate similarly?
No, absolutely different.
Oh,
Absolutely different.
tell me about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, this one's pretty significant, right? We're taking the nav out. We're like making some changes to the overall user's experience that's trying to keep them, you know, down this one single path. Uh, and when it comes to your standard website pages,
Yeah.
uh, like you know, I guess like going back to kind of like our focus, like if our clients are creating 10 pieces of content a month, a lot of the content that we're trying to get people to as a landing page is actually resource, like blog type content.
Yeah.
So it's like it's informative, it's like trying to solve a problem. It may be just like, thought leadership. It's not necessarily like anything about our product. It's just like, we understand your industry and here's some tips and tricks and like the things that we've found that work for us or our clients. And so I think that tends to be more of the approach on the organic side versus the paid side. The paid side, it's like, I'm hoping you're an intentful user. Even if you're buying cycles, 6-month long cycle, I
Yeah.
still hope that you're coming in looking for our product. Like, I'm paying to have the traffic come to my site, so I want it to be, intentful. Organic traffic, you don't always know what the intent is, and sometimes it's, wise not to assume that everybody wants to buy your product and assume that there's a percentage of people that want to buy your product, but that you're actually just leaving. You're providing good, valuable information. Sorry.
Yep. I think that's very important info. And I will say this, it's like, there's two schools of thought. There are people that believe that, for instance, if we're talking about campaigns, so taking it back a little bit to the campaign side,
Yeah.
there are people that are very firm on sending traffic to the regular web page. sending traffic over to the service page, for instance, and things like that. And
Yeah.
like I said, I think there's nothing inherently wrong with that. I think my train of thought would typically be, well, I think if you can try both, and then see kind of what works better for that particular industry. I think obviously do your own due diligence, see what other competitors are doing also in the same space. And,
Yeah.
I think there's that component as well, because for the most part, what you can gain from a landing page, and from what I hear, it sounds like you like to create some landing pages separate from the website,
Yes.
and a lot of times, I think you can A/B test things without the worry of affecting how the rest of people interact with your regular website. The landing pages are typically very targeted to a campaign, whether that's a paid campaign or an email marketing campaign, or a social media campaign.
SEO.
So
Yeah.
it's very, very targeted. And then again, you can very much keep the user focused in what the messaging is for that particular use case. So I think there's a lot to gain on the landing page. I think the problem I see sometimes is the landing pages are not well executed. And again, the content is not in the right place, or things like that. For example, I've seen people that offer, let's say, multiple different services, and then the landing page is more of a homepage summary that says, we do this, A, B, C, D, E, different services, as
Yeah.
opposed to saying, well, most likely somebody found you because they were searching for, let's say, a particular service like, dental implants, and then basically take me to that, talk about that, or give me some case studies about that, or things like that. So I think,
Yeah.
um, there's a lot to gain from landing pages if you execute them correctly. So we technically, more often than not, prefer to do that, but I can
I,
see how both schools of thought make sense.
I, I do too. Like, I think like entry points in your website are very important to consider. Like, especially like if you're seeing like I mean, I will say like we have like, a landing page, Chicago Web Design for our own site that does very well SEO wise, but then we would also send paid campaigns there because it kind of like has the same entry. But like, I think you can also use landing pages as testing areas. Like, I'm thinking that star rating that we have up on that landing page, like maybe we need to put that up on the homepage too, to see like if that helps with the overall conversions as well. So it's a good practice. The other thing I would just say in terms of like landing page versus homepage, if you do want to do a website redesign and you want to like really like change the brand look of your homepage, you could really impact your traffic poorly, from especially the SEO perspective if you're not using like organic landing pages. So like for us, like we can make changes to our homepage because most of our traffic's coming in from landing pages. Like we can make changes to our homepage and not necessarily worry about, is this going to impact overall like our
Yeah.
numbers? Yeah. So
I
yeah.
think it's pretty sweet. So I think we're running a little short on time here. Like I said, I think we could talk on, forever, and we just kind of scratched the surface from some of the specifics. Like I said, if we wanted to get like really nerdy on here, I think we could. And again, I think it's just something to be considerate of, and I think it's been really fun to talk to you, Jesse,
Yeah. We'll have
today.
to do it again.
Absolutely. I think we've covered a lot of different things. We're not gonna have a lot of time for questions here, guys, but Jesse, once again, I think it's been a pleasure. And I got a lot of good info here. I really like, the edits you did on the reviews there. I think that was very interesting, because I have a quick question for you just to close it off. Is, do you prefer, or where do you stand on people that put in, let's say, testimonials on their site as opposed to a review that's published on Google My Business, or in this case G2 reviews? Like, obviously if you put the testimonial that you received internally some other way, that
Yeah.
it's still there, but where do you
Yeah. Like doesn't have the same.
yeah,
Yeah.
do you think it doesn't have the same value or the same impact?
I think you have to be wise in how you what content you put there. So like this is where I would really touch on the pain points that are most common to my ideal customer profile. So if the
Yeah.
testimonial is from a CMO who is speaking directly about, their conversion rates on their paid campaigns, that would be a good testimonial to put up. But I also think I like to do both personally. Like,
Okay.
like, but here, go to Clutch and see for yourself. Like, we don't have any control over what people are saying there about us. Check it out and see what our customers say after they've had an experience with us. So I think yeah, you just again like have to think about like what you're placing there.
Yeah, I think kind of where I sit is somewhere in the middle there, where I like to have reviews that are posted somewhere publicly. If that's Google My Business, if that's YouTube reviews, if that is Trustpilot, just because I think it gives people that are visiting the trust that these are not under our control.
Yep.
And then having a case study or a white paper, or like you said, kind of a testimony that's very targeted, for a very specific story around that service, I think that also goes a long way. But anyways, Jesse,
Cool.
I think we can wrap it up here today. For
Yeah.
everyone that attended today, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Who joined late or you were not able to join, we will obviously share this recording later with everyone that had registered. And we'll be posting it on YouTube as well, so that it's available for everyone. Jesse, any final words here on your side? Like, where can people find you? Where can we point them to?
Yeah, soliddigital.com. That's our main site. And I'm always happy to talk to anybody and give any help that I can, even if you're not necessarily going to become a customer. So reach out and happy to discuss. But thanks, Daniel, for having me on. Really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
Awesome, Jesse. Well, thank you everyone again. You can find us at whitesharkmedia.com, and have a lovely rest of your day. Bye-bye.